previously on the Study Recap series,
where I announced that I'm going to be taking linguistics courses from now on, and I will be putting Russian language study on the back burner until at least the end of this year. Right, so we've got a fall background, we have the fall kind of light outside, but what we do not have is a fall outfit because I am still suffering from the heat, you guys. It is still like 27, 28 degrees every day here in Fukuoka, so I'm gonna be dying over here if I put on a sweater, so I'm sorry about that. I know it doesn't give like September, October vibes, but I mean, I can't. I'm just like too hot. And it's only 7:30 in the morning, so absolutely mental. What I do have that is quite autumny, okay, is a cold. I have a freaking cold from the trip we just went on with my husband. We just came back 2 days ago and I got the cold from my husband, who himself got it from the plane, because we had at the end of our trip a 48-hour trip back home, literally, because we went from London to Singapore and then from Singapore to Fukuoka with a 9.5-hour layover in Singapore. So I let you do the math. It was intense. We basically spent more than 2 days in airports, so hence why my husband got a cold. Anyway, thank you for clicking on today's video, and now let's jump straight into my September study recap. Right, so as per usual, we're gonna start with my September monthly goals and intentions. I had 3, as per usual as well. Usually I do have 3. The first one was to finish the Ryugakusen no Nihongo book, which was an exercise book, which I did, so I'm happy to say that this goal is completed. I finished that during the first week, I think, of September, so quite a while ago for me now. It's been a month, literally. The second goal I had was to finish my linguistics course on the Future Learn website, which I also did, and I got 97%, I think, on this course, so I'm super happy to be done with this one, and I'm very, very excited to start the next one, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And finally, my last goal for the month was to do a double amount of reading immersion. So originally I meant it as, double amount of reading immersion in both Japanese and Chinese, but I ended up reading way more in Japanese than in Chinese, just because I didn't bring any Chinese reading material with me on my trip, which took place at the end of September for the last 2 weeks. I ended up doing way more reading immersion in Japanese, but it still counts as a completed goal, so very happy about that. Alright, now let's move on to my Japanese study recap, and we're going to start it off with my active studying recap of Japanese during the month of September. Like I said, I finished the Ryugakusen no Nihongo exercise book at the beginning of the month. I covered chapters 11 to 14 within the span of 1 week, the first week of September. And if you're interested to know about my full review of this textbook, I will actually post it this week on my Instagram page, so you can definitely check that out. I usually post my reviews of textbooks and just like study materials in general on my Instagram because it's easier for me. Definitely, if you guys are interested, go and check that out. The next textbook I'm gonna be covering actually will be the next one in this same series, and because I am like super pumped about my studying right now, I might start another textbook at the same time just for Japanese. But yeah, the next one I'll be starting will be the number 2 in the Ryugakusen no Nihongo series. Right, in terms of reading immersion now, so like I said, basically doubled the amount of reading I did for the month. Not in terms of books, because I think in total I read like 8 books, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's pretty much the same amount that I've been covering each month since, I want to say, May this year. So not so much in terms of books read, but more in terms of, the actual amount of what I've read, because I've read actually bigger books this this time. And also I restarted novel reading, which obviously is harder than reading comic books. And I'm very happy that I could restart this in September because I had the time. And now I am like on a good roll to continue reading novels. There was a time, basically from the beginning of this year, but I will talk about it more in more details on my reading vlogs on the channel. But just to let you guys know, basically since the beginning of the year, I had the most trouble focusing on fiction, specifically in Japanese. I mostly read in Japanese, so everything I'm talking about is in Japanese, okay? I had the most trouble focusing on fiction. So I was only reading non-fiction for like pretty much, since the beginning of this year. So it's been quite a long time already, 9 months. And I think at some point I realized that part of the reason for this was that I wasn't reading good fiction that was really, gripping me. And every time I tried reading fiction, it was like modern literature that didn't really fit my tastes. So I reviewed all of this and I figured out what I would actually be enjoying from now on. Now that I have found books that I actually want to read, and this was the purpose of my entire video, which came out on the channel, I think 2 weeks ago. Now that I renewed my library and I do have in my possession books that I want to read, especially fiction books, I find it obviously way easier to read now. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I read so much in September, because I could finally read stuff that I wanted to read for ages. So that was amazing. Now, in terms of listening immersion, I did watch, before I went on my trip, a few vlogs and a few technical videos for my technical listening, but not a lot, to be honest with you. And I also took it a bit slower there because I had to, finish up every work-related thing and finish up, the preparation for the trip before we went on our trip in September. So I knew that pretty much the whole month of September would be off my usual routines for language study. So this definitely was reflected in my listening immersion practice for Japanese as well. And I didn't watch that many things in September. Oh, and before we move on to Chinese, I also want to say that because I went on this trip with my husband and we basically spent 2 weeks together all the time. We live together here in Japan, but he is busy with lots of stuff when we are at home, obviously. So we definitely spoke a bit more than usual. I also made it a point to try and really focus on grammatically correct Japanese when speaking to him. So this was also a little bonus practice that I had going on there, just speaking to my husband. Right, so now moving on to my Mandarin Chinese study recap for the month of September, and starting with my active studying. Before we went on our trip at the end of September, I actually went through in my HSK 3 textbook the first full test, basically covering the first chapters of the books. I think it was chapters 4 to 9, something like this. And this full test was basically a proper HSK 3 mock test, but only covering a few points, right? So only covering a few grammar points and vocab lists from this textbook in particular. And I was super happy because it was super hard, but I still got a 72% on it. And I actually made 0 mistakes in the reading section, which I'm very happy about, which means that I'm also finally correcting the little mistakes that I was making when I went through my HSK 2 mock exams. I was making like lots of attention mistakes, even when going through the reading section, which should be the easiest section for me because my reading skills in Chinese come easy to me because I know Japanese. So I'm expecting that I won't be making that many mistakes. But still, I did make a few mistakes in this section when I went through my HSK 2 mock exams. So I was happy to see that for this first mock test for HSK 3, I am not making the same kind of mistakes. And in fact, if I can keep up the streak like this, I don't think I'll be making more mistakes in this section. I should be getting it right every time. Now, I made 10 mistakes in the listening section, which was a lot. I mean, for due reason, because this was the hardest section of all, out of 3 sections. There was a lot of times when I just didn't know what was going on. I just didn't understand most of what was said in the audio, so I couldn't answer the questions, obviously. So definitely this is something that I need to work on from now on. HSK 3 audio is way harder, I find, than HSK 2. There is definitely a gap here. I mean, I'm not too worried here because I know that this will correct itself because I'm doing a lot of listening immersion on the side, and I've also started another thing which I will tell you about in a minute. I'm happy with what I got, even though I'm still making lots of mistakes in this section. I know that this will improve from now on. And now for the last section of the test, which was the writing section. So this is the first time I have a writing section in an HSK mock exam, because in HSK 1 and 2 there are no writing sections. But finally there is a writing section in this level of the HSK. I actually made 4 mistakes there, but they were small mistakes and I don't think they were that significant, so I just need to correct that. Be careful next time. I don't think I will be having issues with this writing section either. You know, I've had practice of this kind of exercises in the past. Exercises are basically, you know, put the words that are given to you in the right order to make a grammatically correct sentence in Chinese, or you need to find the missing word. And this kind of exercise I've already done a few times when I was covering other textbooks before that. I'm not having particular issues with that. I'm quite good with that, so I'm not really worried. Really, I think the focus for me will be the listening section from now on. Alright, now in terms of reading immersion in Mandarin, I did cover a few stories from my Chugoku de Choto Ihanashi book in September. Nothing to say here. I'm reading even faster and it's even smoother than before, so I'm really happy. Hoping to finish the book quite soon now. And I've also read a little bit on Do Chinese, but not a lot, and I don't think I have any insert shots for this one, so you just have to take my word for it. Regarding listening immersion here, I did go through a few videos of free to learn Chinese, which I'm still loving. Also a few vlogs by Vicky Soups. I think she's the Chinese creator I follow the most on YouTube. Definitely I'm almost up to date with her vlogs, so anytime she uploads you can expect that I'm gonna be watching the vlog, and I get my listening immersion practice like this every single week, so thanks to her. Thank you, Vicky. And then the last thing I've been watching, which doesn't really count as listening immersion, but I've still been watching multiple times, the videos by Grace Mandarin. So I've been watching her videos. I love Grace's videos. I've been watching her videos basically since the beginning of my journey, my study journey with Chinese, because I found her channel, I think, on the first day I started studying Chinese. And I've been focusing on the pronunciation videos that she's made, which I love. They are all very, very useful. And this is because, and now we're coming on to the last part of this recap for Chinese, I've started finally my conversation practice lessons. Yay! So this was a goal of mine with Chinese for this year, so I'm super happy to finally be starting my conversation practice. And I found a tutor on Cafe Talk, June. She's amazing. She actually lives in Japan. Her husband is Japanese, so we do have a few points in common, so we have things to talk about. She speaks Japanese as well, and we do the lessons in both English and Japanese. Whenever she's comfortable speaking in English, then we speak in English. Whenever she wants to switch to Japanese, we switch to Japanese without any issues. And with her, because I told her that this was my first time actually taking lessons with a tutor, I told her that I wanted to go to the basics of pronunciation, because I haven't actually practiced those with a native speaker and with a teacher. So this is my first time, and I told her that I wanted to go back to this point, so that's what we're covering right now. So we're working on my tones, and once I'm comfortable with basic pronunciation, then we'll move on to reading stuff together, and she'll be obviously correcting my tones and correcting my pronunciation in Chinese. And once I get comfortable with that aspects of the language, then we'll move on to conversation. So right now I can't really call those lessons conversation practice lessons, but you get my point. They will become eventually conversation lessons. So far I took 4 lessons. 2 lessons were of 1 hour each, and then 2 lessons were of 30 minutes each. So in total 3 hours with a tutor for my Chinese, and I've been having so much fun. You have no idea, guys. Alright, so that concludes my Chinese study recap. Now let's move on to the last section of this video. Alright, and now for the last section of our video today, let's talk about my linguistics study recap. During the month of September, I finished my Introduction to Intercultural Studies, Language and Culture course on Future Learn. It is 100% completed now, and I've completed week 2 of courses entirely through the first and the second week of September. During this week 2, there was also a full research assignment that I had to go through, and I wrote a 500-word essay on endangered languages of France, and I chose Breton myself. The original task was to produce a short essay on a language that is classified as vulnerable or endangered according to the UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger. And I think I did a good job there. I got a good grade as well, so I'm really happy. And overall on the course, I've completed all of the tasks, obviously, and I got a 97% if I'm not wrong. So that's done, that's completed. I'm super happy to be done with this course. It was absolutely wonderful. If I were to rate it, honestly, I wouldn't be able to, because I need to have something to compare it to. So I will rate this course once I get another one done, just to have a comparison element to help me. Right now I don't have any standard to compare this to, so I really enjoyed it, but let's see if I enjoy other courses even more than this, or maybe this was amazing and I will enjoy the next courses a bit less. I don't know, we will see. And actually, guys, that will be it for today's video already. This was a quick one, also because I didn't spend that much time studying languages in September. I mostly focused on finishing up a few things before I went on my trip, and then during my trip, I didn't do any language study. I focused on my reading immersion in Japanese. In any case, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, if you're interested, please go and watch all of the other videos in this series of study recaps that I'm doing this year on my channel. I do a monthly recap of all the language study I do every single month. And on that note, I will see you in my next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye. Matani.
Simple observations of a tide